These are thousands of Americans fleeing one of the most beautiful places on Earth, and it has nothing to do with the cold. Alaska is hemorrhaging residents at an alarming rate, losing nearly 9,000 people in just 1 year, with young adults packing up and leaving in droves. Think about this for a moment. Alaska has lost over 50,000 residents since 2013. That's like watching an entire city vanish. And while everyone assumes it's because people can't handle negative 40 degrees, the truth cuts deeper and hits harder than any winter storm. I've spent weeks analyzing the data, talking to economists, and uncovering what's really driving this modern exodus from America's last frontier. What I found challenges everything you might assume about why people abandon their lives in Alaska. Let me paint you a picture of the real Alaska, not the one you see in travel documentaries. Imagine paying $8 for a gallon of milk, $15 for orange juice. In some villages, gasoline costs over $10 per gallon. The cost of living in Alaska runs 24.4% higher than the national average, and that's not even the worst part. Here's what really stings. Alaska has no state income tax or sales tax. Residents even get paid to live there through the annual Permanent Fund Dividend. Yet people are still fleeing in record numbers. Why would anyone leave a state that literally pays you to stay? The answer starts with oil. In 2014, oil prices plummeted from over $100 to under $50 per barrel. For a state that depends on oil revenues for nearly 90% of its budget, this meant catastrophe. Alaska suddenly faced massive deficits, and the solutions have been driving people away ever since. Dr. Mushin Gwetabi from the University of Alaska Anchorage put it bluntly when he said we're seeing a brain drain of our youngest and brightest. And he's right. The largest group leaving Alaska consists of adults aged 25 to 44, people in their prime working years who should be building Alaska's future. But why are they leaving? Let's start with jobs, or rather, the lack of them. Alaska's unemployment rate sits at 4.5%, higher than the national average. But that number masks the real issue, which is job diversity, or the complete absence of it. If you're not working in oil, government, tourism, or fishing, your options shrink dramatically. Neil Freed, an economist with the Alaska Department of Labor, nailed it when he said the lack of a vibrant economy outside of oil is driving people away. Want to work in tech? Good luck finding opportunities. Interested in finance? You'll need to look elsewhere. Dream of working in media or entertainment? You're probably moving to the lower 48. Young professionals quickly realize that advancing their careers means leaving Alaska behind. The situation deteriorated dramatically after the oil crash. Major employers like BP Alaska and ConocoPhillips scaled back operations. The ripple effects devastated communities. When oil companies cut back, contractors lose work, and when contractors lose work, local businesses suffer. When local businesses suffer, everyone feels the pain. Then came the budget cuts. In 2019, Governor Mike Dunleavy proposed slashing the University of Alaska's budget by 41%. While the cuts weren't quite that severe, the university system still faced massive reductions. Programs vanished, faculty positions disappeared, entire campuses considered closing. For young Alaskans, this sent a clear message: your state isn't investing in your future. Why stay somewhere that's actively dismantling its education system? But the crisis extends far beyond education. Alaska faces a healthcare catastrophe that's forcing families to make impossible choices. Rural hospitals keep closing. The state needs over 600 teachers. Healthcare workers flee to states where they can earn more and spend less. Imagine living in a village where the nearest hospital requires a plane ride. Not a drive, a plane ride. And that's assuming weather permits flying. Now imagine that hospital closes. Where do you go when your child gets sick? How do you manage a chronic condition? For many Alaskans, the answer becomes simple: you leave. The isolation factor weighs heavily too. Alaska sits 1,400 miles from the nearest US state. Flying to Seattle, the closest major city, takes 3 hours and costs hundreds of dollars. Want to visit family for the holidays? That's easily a $1,000 expense just for airfare. Nolan Clowder from UAA's Center for Economic Development captured this perfectly when he said it's not just about money anymore. People want amenities, culture, and connectivity that Alaska struggles to provide. And he's absolutely right. In rural Alaska, internet speeds crawl at rates 200 times slower than the urban US average. 200 times slower. In an age where remote work could theoretically allow people to live anywhere, Alaska's infrastructure makes it impossible for many jobs. Young adults crave experiences, concerts, restaurants, nightlife, cultural events. In Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, options remain limited. In smaller towns, they're virtually non-existent. The joke among young Alaskans is that there are two seasons, winter and construction. Neither offers much in terms of entertainment. The pandemic accelerated everything. Tourism, one of Alaska's economic pillars, completely collapsed in 2020. Cruise ships stopped coming. Hotels sat empty. Thousands of seasonal jobs vanished overnight. While tourism has started recovering, the workforce shortage means many businesses can't fully reopen. Here's what makes this especially tragic. Alaska is breathtakingly beautiful. It has more coastline than all other US states combined. The wildlife amazes visitors. The wilderness remains unmatched. Yet beauty doesn't pay the bills or create career opportunities. The state's rural areas suffer the most. Entire villages watch their young people leave and never return. These aren't just statistics. These are communities losing their future. Schools close when there aren't enough children. Stores shut down when there aren't enough customers. Slowly, village by village, rural Alaska withers away. The ferry system that connects Southeast Alaska communities reduced service due to budget cuts. Imagine if the highways in your state suddenly had restricted hours. That's the reality for Alaskans who depend on ferries as their primary transportation. Climate change adds another layer of complexity. Traditional subsistence activities like hunting and fishing grow unpredictable. Ice roads that communities depend on form later and melt earlier. The very landscape that defines Alaska shifts beneath their feet, and with it, ways of life that have existed for thousands of years. Some argue Alaska just needs to develop more resources, new mines, new oil projects, but others worry about environmental damage and impacts on subsistence lifestyles. This debate paralyzes progress while people continue streaming out. The urban-rural divide keeps widening. Anchorage residents push for modernization, better internet, more shopping options. Rural communities fight to preserve traditional ways while struggling with modern necessities. Neither side is wrong, but finding balance proves elusive. Recent developments offer glimmers of hope. Federal funding for broadband expansion could finally bring rural Alaska into the digital age. Renewable energy projects create new job opportunities. The military expands its presence, providing economic stability. Some companies now embrace remote work, potentially allowing people to stay in Alaska while working for outside employers. But these bright spots fade against ongoing challenges. The teacher shortage has reached crisis levels. Healthcare consolidation attempts meet fierce resistance. The fundamental question persists: how does Alaska diversify its economy before it's too late? What's happening in Alaska serves as a warning for other states dependent on single industries. When that industry falters, everything collapses. The cascade of consequences, from budget cuts to service reductions to population loss, creates a downward spiral that's incredibly difficult to reverse. For those who stay, life in Alaska demands resilience. You accept paying more for everything. You accept limited job options. You accept isolation from family and friends. You do it because you love the wilderness, the community, the lifestyle. But love doesn't always overcome practical realities. The saddest part is that many who leave don't want to go. They're economic refugees forced out by circumstances beyond their control. They carry Alaska in their hearts, hoping to return someday. But someday rarely comes. Alaska's population crisis isn't about weather. It's about opportunity, affordability, and quality of life. It's about a state struggling to provide basic services while grappling with enormous geographic challenges and economic uncertainty. The question isn't whether Alaska can survive, because it will. The question is, what kind of Alaska will remain? Will it be a thriving state that's found ways to overcome its challenges? Or will it become increasingly hollow, beautiful but empty, rich in resources but poor in people? For Alaska, time keeps slipping away. Every person who leaves takes their potential contributions with them. Every family that relocates removes children from schools, customers from businesses, participants from communities. The exodus feeds on itself, making life harder for those who remain. This is the reality of modern Alaska, a paradise that's becoming increasingly difficult to afford, both financially and personally. A last frontier that many can no longer justify calling home. The cold never drove them away. The circumstances did.